One second. Okay, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I apologize for that delay in getting started. It's actually amazing that doesn't happen more often. Really, from day one, we were sort of off and running, and the process of using Zoom, by and large, has been a pretty comfortable and seamless process. But every once in a while, we get a humble reminder that the technology is not always perfect. But most importantly, I thank you for sticking with us and for waiting and for being patient. I had planned to speak no more than an hour, but now I'm going to actually speak a little less. So we'll still have you out on time. I want to begin by taking this opportunity, first of all, to thank you for joining me in that which I hope will be a very meaningful three-part series, in which we talk about something that is always an important topic, but at least in my mind, it's something that has particular meaning and relevance for the time in which we find ourselves right now. I am going to share my screen with you, and hopefully you can all see that. Elisa, does that go through?
Yep.
Good, wonderful. And we're going to make this a little more, not necessarily interactive, but hopefully a little more enjoyable, that you'll get to actually see some Makomos in front of you, so you won't just have to see my face the entire time. I thank Elisa not only for coordinating all the logistics, but also for putting together this beautiful flyer, sort of showcasing what we hope to accomplish over 3 nights. Tonight, I hope to talk a little bit about the Halachic imperative personal health management. We'll break that down over the next 45 minutes or so. This coming Tuesday night, a rerun from 6 years ago, when we spoke about the 5 unhealthy habits of Orthodox Jews. We can see whether or not they've changed at all. But that will be topic for Tuesday night. And 1 week from tomorrow, please God, we will talk about from parks to schools and golf courses to shuls, preserving health and protecting life while pursuing Torah u'mitzvot. And as you perhaps can see, there's a bit of a progression that I imagine over here. First, the discussion that we're going to start tonight is really just going to be about the importance of maintaining health in general, not necessarily unique to the circumstances in which we find ourselves right now. And Tuesday night's discussion is a reminder that that in general, nothing to do with coronavirus, we have as individuals and as a community, perhaps an opportunity to do a cheshbon nefesh on some of our lifestyle habits, which are not always so healthy. And I hope to use this as sort of a segue into talking about what is really on everybody's mind, and that is not just what's going to happen next and when are we going to get out of this mess that we're in, but to understand and to appreciate with a little more nuance and with more humility the decisions that are being made and how they're being made, and how we navigate our way through some very, very difficult situations from a halachic perspective. So right now we find ourselves, of course, in the middle of a global crisis. I think it is fair to say that in our lifetime, we have never experienced a medical crisis that is quite like the one that we are facing right now. From a health perspective, we have probably all been thinking about and talking about and dreaming about, and maybe even to a certain extent obsessing, maybe in a whole unhealthy way, about health-related issues for close to 2 months now. But really, like I said, I would like the focus of tonight's discussion not to be on the current crisis, and not to talk about, the importance of washing one's hands because of the fact that there are, specific germs and pathogens that are in the air at the moment, but really to take a step back and to appreciate that as Jews, and particularly as halachically observant Jews, the conversation that we should have around health is really not a new one. And this particular crisis, while it may in some ways have brought some of these issues to the forefront of our minds, these are things that we should be thinking about and talking about always. If one does a Google search on health craze in America, as I did, so you'll see over here just some of the topics to come up right away. And the concept of a craze, maybe even sort of an obsession, as I mentioned before, that exists within society and particularly within our country, is not new. Unfortunately, as you can see, there is a lot that people are talking about. Some of these conversations are healthy, no pun intended, and some of them are not. Whenever we are talking about a craze of any sort, so one has to wonder, is it ever a good idea to be crazy? Whether it's about a gluten-free craze, as you see over here, or America's health craze for fish oil is wiping out, believe it or not, the world's fish supply, coconut water craze, organic craze, all different types of crazes. I'm not sure that a craze is healthy, but I think it is fair to say that we live at a time in history in which a lot of people are talking about health, the importance of health, and many, many people claim to have ideas as to what is in fact healthy and how we can live healthy lifestyles. But I want to ask a question. From a Torah perspective, is it really important to talk about health? You may be wondering, it's a little funny, here I am as a rabbi talking to you about health. I don't have the credentials to talk to you about health. Not only am I not an MD, and I don't have any medical qualifications, I am not a health coach, I am not a personal trainer, I don't have any training whatsoever. I don't have any qualifications to really stand here, or more accurately sit here and talk to you about health. But as a rabbi, I feel that actually I do have not only a right, but even a responsibility to talk to you about the importance of health from a Torah perspective. I want to share with you a fascinating Gemara. This Gemara that appears on your screen is found in Masechah Shabbos Daf Pei Beis. For those who are learning Daf Yomi, we'll be there in about a month from now. Amar le Rav Huna le Rabba Berei. The Gemara tells us that Rav Huna once said the following to his son Rabba: "My taima lo shchichas kamedu Rav Chizda." Why don't you ever go to learn by Rav Chizda? I guess even in the days of Rav Huna and Rabba, there were different shiurim that people can go to. And Rav Huna thought that his son Rabba would really benefit by going to learn by the great Rav Chizda. So he said, why don't you go learn ever by Rav Chizda, the Mechadin Shmaisei, that he's so sharp in his learning, he's such an Eloi, he's such a genius, you will benefit so much from going to Rav Chizda's shir. So Amalei, so Rabba said back to his father Rav Huna, my ezel legabe, why should I go to him? The chiyazilna legabe mosif li b'mili di alma. He says, because when I go to him, I've tried it out. I've tried out that shir. And when I go there, all he talks about is mili di alma. Now, what is mili di alma? Literally, that means sort of matters of the world, worldly matters. In other words, he seems to be saying, he's not talking about Torah topics. He's talking about things that I really don't want to hear from my Rebbe. And he goes on to give examples about the sort of advice and pointers that Rav Chizda would give his Talmidim about how they should conduct themselves in the bathroom of all places, how they should prepare for that experience, and how they should actually relieve themselves, and how they should clean up afterwards. And Rabbi basically said to his father Rav Huna, listen, if I have questions about how to manage my health, I'll go to my doctor, but I don't really need to go to my Rebbe. So I want you to skip now with me to the end, the last two lines, where Rav Huna says to his son, Rabba, Amalei, he says, Hu asik b'chaya de briyasa, but amris b'mili di alma. He is engaging in discussions that have to do with health and promotion of one's physical body, and you call that mili di alma? You were referring to that as just worldly matters? Kol shekain zilagabe. He says, how much more so you should go to learn by him. So it's amazing. Already in the days of the Amoraim, so our great sages were talking about the importance of managing one's health. Now again, this particular discussion over here, or the issues that are mentioned in this Gemara, are specific to one area of health management. But you see, not only was this important to Rav Chizda, but he would bring it into a shir, and the great sage Rav Huna encouraged his son Rabba to go and to learn by him, not only the Mechadin Shmaisei because he was such a great Talmid Chacham, but specifically because he was talking about matters of health. So even a rabbi who may not be, again, professionally qualified to give advice and health tips, and I guess I'll begin right now with a disclaimer that I'm not really here to give any specific health advice and tips. You don't come to me for that. But I am here to try to impart to you a very important message, and that is from a Torah perspective, thinking about our health and the way we maintain and care for our body is absolutely something of interest, not just to me personally, but should be to all of us as Torah observant Jews. There's another fascinating Gemara I want to share with you. It comes from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Tzavi Aleph, where the Gemara says that there was a certain individual, Antininus, who was a bit of a, he was an antagonist. He would like to incite Rebbe, and the Gemara records many conversations that the two of them had. And he once said to Rebbe, he said, guf neshama yecholin lifter atzma min adin. He said, when the day of judgment comes and the body is, when a person dies and the soul is recalled, so what can happen is that the guf and the neshama, if they're smart, they'll get together and they can basically evade any judgment from God. Ketzad, how could they do that? So guf omar or omer neshama chatasa shemiyom shapir shemimeni. My screen is black. 1 second. Harini muto ke'evin domein bekever. Because at the day that the soul left me, the body will say, I was lying lifeless. I couldn't move. I was like an appliance without any electricity. I'm nothing without the soul. Uneshama meres guf chata. And the neshama will say, what do you mean? It was all the body. Shemiyom shepirashti mimeni harini porachas bavir kitzipor. Because the day that I left the body, I was free. I don't have any interest in worldly matters. I don't care about anything that the body cares about. And to a certain extent, you'll forgive the cartoon over here for a moment, both the guf and the neshama were sort of going at it and saying, it's your fault, it's your fault. And Antinous says to Rebbe, if the guf and the neshama are smart, so then they'll get together, they will conspire and essentially be able to evade judgment. So Amar Lei, so Rebbe said back, he says, he says, I'm going to give you a parallel. And through this parallel, I'm going to show you that what you're saying doesn't make any sense. This could be compared to a human king, show you snow at a beautiful orchard, with many, many beautiful trees and fruits. And he appoints 2 watchmen to guard and to protect the fruit of this orchard. One of them was a crippled watchman, and the other one was blind. So one day, the chiger, the one who's crippled, said to the blind person, you should see this orchard. It's amazing, beautiful trees, delicious looking fruit. He says, put me on your shoulders and bring me to eat them. So they come up with this great plan. The chiger gets on top of the shoulders of the summa, and he brings them and they eat the fruit. After some time, the Balabardes comes and he said, what happened to my beautiful fruit? So the chiger says, don't look at me, I don't have any feet. I can't walk. And the Subba says, don't look at me, I'm blind. I don't even know where I'm going. So what does the Melech Basav Adam do? The king was smart at both of them. And takes the chiger and places them on top of the summa, v'dan osam ke'echad, and judges them together as one entity. Af HaKadosh Baruch Hu made neshama v'zorka b'guf v'dan osam ke'echad. Says Rebbe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do the same. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us as sort of a dual entity. We are a combination of body and soul, and we are ultimately expected to live our life with a recognition that we have a body and we have a soul, and the two of them have to sort of work together in unison. And ultimately, when we are to appear before HaKadosh Baruch Hu on our day of judgment, we are going to be judged just as that, and body and soul, not two separate entities, but really one combined, fused entity. It's interesting. We know that there is, of course, a siman in Shulchan Aruch that deals with the laws of Asher Yatzar. Siman Vav in Shulchan Aruch is where you will find a discussion not just about the bracha of Asher Yatzar, but actually what the bracha means. The words Asher Yatzar, the entire bracha line by line. If I am not mistaken, and please you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not aware of any other siman in Shulchan Aruch which deals with the explanation of any other brachos. Of course, you'll find many discussions in Shulchan Aruch about what bracha that we're supposed to recite when, and everything from small brachos to long brachos, but you do not find an extensive discussion, like I said, word by word, line by line, of what a bracha means, like we do find by Asher Yatzar. The Shulchan Aruch teaches us in Siman Vav Sif Aleph. Now I'm going to skip right to the end of the bracha Mafli Lasos. What does it mean when we say at the end of the bracha Asher Yatzar Umafli Lasos that there's a sort of wonder in the human body? Because the Mechaber says that a person's body is compared, again, like a mashal, to a balloon, which is full with air. We know that if you have a balloon and you make even just a small hole with a pin, it pops, and all of the air escapes. Says the Shulchan Aruch, our body contains a neshama. The neshama in this regard is compared to air. It's not really made of physical air, but yet when you look at a person, we have these holes. I have holes, my eyes, my nose and mouth. We have all of these orifices in our body, and yet somehow the neshama is mishtameres besocho. It's contained within. And says the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah over here as well, says, Mafli lasos, b'masha shomer ruach adam b'kirbo, v'kosher davar ruchani b'davar gashmi. The real pella of human existence, the real wonder, is not just the incredible bodies that we have, and all the different systems that we can consider, the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the neurological system. There's so many amazing systems that make up our incredible bodies. But the biggest pella of all, the pella that we are supposed to think about every time we say the words Asher Yatzar, Umafli Lasos, is the fact that the Guf and the Neshama come together and fuse. They fuse biyachad, and they become sort of like one entity. And this is the greatest miracle. This is the greatest pella, the greatest wonder of human creation. If you look around and you Google like I did, all about the mystery, the science of the soul, you will see that many have written, many have explored, tried to understand, how do we understand the soul? What is the soul? Can we see the soul? Can we measure the soul? Can we detect it in a laboratory? And even scientists who may not be, forget God-fearing, even God-believing people, may not even believe in the existence of the soul, have no choice but to sort of grapple with the obvious questions when we think about the entire concept of human existence and how it is that humans, we have this capacity to not just to communicate and not just to think on a higher level, but to live a level of existence is one which is completely transcendent compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, but yet it's a pella. What is this? It's not, it just can't merely be understood as electric impulses going through our brains. There has to be something more sophisticated, greater than that. And there is. And we essentially summarize that incredible phenomenon with the words of Mafli Lasos every time we say the bracha of Asher Yatzar. Rav Schwab, in his Sefer on prayer, on the bracha of Asher Yatzar, says something which is amazing. He says, furthermore, this bracha refers to the complete human being. In Kabbalistic terms, the human body is called Adam Aruchani, spiritual man, because the human body contains not only 248 organs and 365 sinews in the physical sense, but it also contains the same number of spiritual organs. We have many expressions for our spiritual and emotional functions, which utilize parts of our body as metaphors. Some examples are Lev Shomea, an understanding heart, which means intelligence. Lev Nishbar, a broken heart, which means humility. Hamume I, my intestines pain, meaning a feeling of sympathy. Kloyos Yotzos, the kidneys of eyes, meaning intuition. That Chazal use, and we find in Psukim as well, all of these metaphors, which highlight the fact that our body, even the organs of our body, have some greater spiritual purpose. So this is a really, really fascinating, amazing idea. This is something that, if we think about on a deeper level, it enables us to appreciate with so much more, I think, so much more of a sense of appreciation, not just for our bodies, not just for our physical health, but understanding again, this great fusion that takes place between body and soul. Now, as we talk about health management on a practical level, so I'm going to begin with a question. I'm going to leave this sort of as an open-ended question. I have my thoughts on it, but I want you to think about it. And that is, do we have, the word on the screen is bailus, over our bodies. I could translate the word bailus, and I guess I will, but there are certain words that are left better left rather untranslated. I think bailus is one of them. So I guess we could translate as, do we have control, do we have authority, do we have autonomy over our bodies? That's my question. Do we have? So I think to a certain extent, the answer is yes. We have the right to choose how we style our hair, for those of us who actually have hair. We have the right to choose whether we, how we get dressed, which to a certain extent is also sort of an expression of autonomy over our bodies and how we adorn our bodies, whether we put on jewelry or makeup, whatever the case may be. So on a certain level, there are no absolute standards. And I can't say there are no restrictions, but to a certain extent, there is a lot of flexibility as to how we maintain, how we present our bodies. And if I don't like your haircut, I can go over you and give you my opinion, but ultimately it's your choice how you want to cut your hair. Again, assuming that you're within the framework of halacha, there are certain restrictions as to how a person can and can't cut their hair, but you get the basic idea. On the other hand, I can decide for myself if I want to let my hair grow a little longer, if I want it a little shorter, if I want to part it on the right or part it a little. This is all up to me. That is my decision. But we know and we could appreciate that there is a limit to this. It says over here, November 2nd, 2014, that's when I first stumbled upon this story that really, at the time, really, if you may recall, this is 6 years ago, was a major discussion and debate in our country, which still is, but things have shifted rather radically over the past 6 years. This is an essay, or I'm going to share with you an excerpt of an essay that was written by Brittany Maynard, who died tragically at the age of 29 years old. She died of cancer. And she, I don't want to say she began a movement, but she became a very vocal spokeswoman for the right to die movement that, like I said, has picked up quite a lot of momentum over the past 5 years. And she writes, "I do not want to die, but I am dying. And I want to die on my own terms. Having this choice at the end of my life has become incredibly important. It has given me a sense of peace during a tumultuous time that otherwise would be dominated by fear, uncertainty, and pain. I would not tell anyone else that he or she should choose death with dignity. My question is, who has the right to tell me that I don't deserve this choice? That I deserve to suffer for weeks or months in tremendous amounts of physical and emotional pain? Why should anyone have the right to make that choice for me?" Now, thinking about this, without thinking from a halachic, without thinking about it from a religious perspective, just from a completely secular human perspective, I will be honest that her argument over here is very compelling. Needless to say, this is heartbreaking to hear a young woman in the prime of her life who's faced with the terminal illness and feeling that the only choice she had left was to decide how and when she would die. I don't remember where she lived at the time, but she traveled to spend the last days of her life in Oregon, which was at the time, I believe, one of the only, maybe it was the only or one of two states in the country that allowed for physician-assisted suicide. That she was essentially given the right, the autonomy to decide, to a certain extent, when and how she would die. Since then, there have been more states that have permitted the right of a patient under certain circumstances to decide when and how they will die. New Jersey, as many of you know, is actually one of those states in which it is now permitted, again, under certain situations, for people to make this choice, to die legally with the assistance of medical science by ending one's life early. Now, I don't really want to talk about that particular issue, but I think it's an important one because it highlights the extent to which even modern, advanced, sophisticated man could presume to have a bias, again, a sort of autonomy over our bodies, not just in how I want to style my hair, but literally the very right to live and to die. Decisions that, at least according to our tradition, are made by God and God alone. So here, there are people in our world who sort of presume this right and say, well, it's my body, and so therefore I should have that right. We may also hear of terms like, pro-choice, when it comes to the right of a woman to choose to have an abortion. Again, a very, very complicated topic. And I don't really want to talk about this at all, but just to mention the fact that we live at a time in which people speak about, the right of a person to go ahead and to make certain decisions as to what I do, what I don't want done to, with, or on my body. Now, we know already from a halachic perspective, there are limitations. So, for example, and these aren't as controversial, the Torah says that we cannot put a tattoo upon our bodies. It's my body. So after all, as long as that tattoo is not particularly offensive, and what if I put it under my clothes? Nobody's going to see it. So it's still forbidden according to the Torah. Certain forms of self-mutilation, the Torah explicitly prohibits hurting oneself or cutting one's body as a sign of mourning, which was common in certain ancient pagan societies. Chov el biatzmo, the idea that a person cannot injure oneself. There are limitations as to what a person can do with his body. But Moshe Feinstein in Shuvah writes that in a situation where a person wants to diet, and this is not a diet which is recommended for health reasons. In fact, the doctor says, listen, you're at a perfect weight. There's no need to go ahead and lose any more weight. You look great the way you are. You're perfect. Just stay that way. And a person says no. And they decide to deny and deprive their body of food. And so therefore they feel tired and weak and don't feel comfortable. But Moshe says that this is an example of chov ba'atzmo. This is like a form of self-harm, of self-injury. Now we would all think, well, this is my right, it's my body. And halacha says, not so quick, not so quick. And even, by the way, when we talk about obligations, obligations that we have, Torah obligations. I'll give you an example which we may not even think about in these terms, but the mitzvah of Mila. When we think about it, a couple, they obviously, it requires the input, the consent, and the blessings of God to bring a baby into this world. But a husband and wife, they feel to a certain extent like the creators, not necessarily with the capital C, but as the Gemara Nida tells us, that three shutfim in the creation of man, husband and wife, and God. And so therefore, even if we include God in that equation, so the husband and wife, and we feel like, hey, look what we made, look what we did, we brought this baby into the world. And on the eighth day, the Torah says, we just read it last week, the Torah says this is what you are to do. You are to perform a bris milah. Now I know most people wouldn't even think twice about it. After all, we know it's an important part of our tradition, it's an important mitzvah. But just to take a moment and just think about the significance of that the Torah is instructing us what to do, in this case to the body of our child. The Torah is reminding us that your body is not yours. The body of your child is not yours. The Torah retains a certain autonomy. Just a couple of weeks ago, we ate matzah. Hopefully, we all like eating matzah. But I know there are some people out there who don't like eating matzah. A person doesn't like eating matzah. Do I have to eat it? We're not talking about a situation where there's a severe allergy. Do I have to eat it? I don't like dalit kosas. Do I have to drink it? So the answer is yes, but I don't like it. Again, normally, I get to choose what I eat, what I drink. But there are times when sort of the Torah steps in and say, yeah, but you have an obligation to do this. You know, the concept of Taras HaMishpacha in a general sense, but more specifically, the idea that the Torah sort of regulates and controls and legislates certain aspects of our lives, family planning. These are examples, and I'm sure there are many, many more that we could think of, in which the Torah is not merely imparting a certain spirit, a certain ruach to the way we should live our life, but literally is reminding us that we don't have full control over our bodies. Now, what you have in the page in front of you right now is a cover page from one of the volumes of the Rambam's Mishnah Torah. We know that the Rambam has several important works, but perhaps the most famous of all, I think we would all agree, is what's called the Mishnah Torah, where the Rambam basically collects and gathers and classifies in a very, very profound and sophisticated way Kol Torah Kula. He takes all the laws from the Torah, from the Talmud, and incorporates it into this incredibly brilliant classified system. And it's called the Yad HaChazaka because there are 14 major books. And Yad Dalet is 14. The 11th, Sefer HaChadasah, the 11th book, is called Sefer Nezikin. And in Sefer Nezikin, so the Rambam has several different sub-books within Sefer Nezikin. One of them is called Hilchos Nizkei Mamon, which deals with the laws of property damage, Hilchos Geneva and Hilchos Gezela Vaveda, which deals with the laws of theft, Hilchos Chovel Mazik, having to do with injuring other people. And then the last one on the list is Hilchos Rotzeach Ushmiras Nefesh. The Rambam talks about the laws of murder and Shmiras Nefesh, protecting and guarding one's life, one's health. I think it's important to note that the Rambam, who would never hesitate to create another subsection of any one of his Sfarim, chooses to incorporate within one section the laws of Ritzicha, murder, and Shmiras HaNefesh, of protecting and guarding and maintaining one's health. When you think about it, that's a little strange, because those are two very different topics. You know, when we talk about Shmiras HaNefesh, we could be talking about things as mundane as, you know, whether or not, what my diet should look like, and maybe whether I'm eating too much sugar. And the Rambam will say the topic of Shmiras HaNefesh and thinking about how we protect and maintain and watch out for hazards in our life, our own health, is a topic of discussion which is to be incorporated in the topic of Ritzicha, of murder. And perhaps what the Rambam is trying to subtly, or maybe not so subtly, convey to us is that discussions of physical safety and maintaining one's health are serious discussions, as serious as the discussion of murder itself. And maybe, and I'll show you if we have time at the end, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch states this explicitly, not when explaining the Rambam, but just on his own, and that is that when we don't take care of ourselves, to a certain extent, we are actually killing ourselves. Not immediately, and not maybe in the most literal sense, but to a certain extent, that's what we are, because we only have a limited amount of time on this earth. We have limited resources. We only have one body, and we only have one chance to get it right. And so therefore, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our health is serious business. These are literally life and death matters. Now, if I would ask you, which pasuk in the Torah, where is the pasuk that teaches how important it is to maintain our health? So many would know that it comes from a Gemara in Brachos Daf Lamed Beis, where the Gemara teaches as follows: Tanu Rabbanan, Ma'aseh b'chassid echad sheyimispalu b'derech. There was a certain chassid who was once davening on the side of the road, and there was a sar, there was a certain government officer who came by, and he greeted this individual who was davening. But because he was davening Shemon Esrei, he decided he didn't want to respond. He didn't respond. So this sar waited until he was done with Shemon Esrei, and when he was done, he berated him. And he said, Reika, which means like empty one, fool. It says in your Torah, the Torah says, be careful and protect your body or yourself well. And it says, take care of yourself. He says, when I said hello to you, why didn't you respond? He said, I could have cut off your head right then and there. I guess because of the time and place, this particular officer had the right, the authority to go ahead and kill this person for ignoring him. And he says, nobody would have claimed your blood from me. I had the right to do that. So the Gemara goes on to share how the chassid tried to respond and sort of appease this sar. I'm not interested at the moment in his response, but what I am interested is in sort of highlighting these two psukim that the sar uses to teach this chassid a lesson. And that is, you got to take care of yourself. You only get one life. You just risked your life in order to serve your God. How could you do that? After all, the Torah says, be careful, take good care of yourself. Be very, very careful, protect and guard your life. Now, where do these psukim come from? Some of you may know, it says over here, it comes from Devarim Perek Daled. But what's the context over here? So it's very interesting. It has nothing to do whatsoever in context with the discussion of maintaining one's health. I'll read the psukim to you, and then maybe shortly we'll try to explain why it's found over here. But over here, the Torah says, be very, very careful. Protect yourself. Never forget what you saw where? By Har Sinai. To teach your children and your grandchildren. The day that you stood before Hashem at Har Sinai. And Moshe is recounting how God spoke to me, and he said, gather the people. And he said, I want you to teach the people how important it is to remember this moment that to fear me. But we stood by Har Sinai, and the mountain was engulfed in flames. And there was this clouds and smoke. And God spoke from the fire. And you heard God speak to you. You heard his voice. And God forged a covenant with you, and he gave you the Aseres Hadvarim, what we call the Aseres Hadibros, and gave you these two tablets. So Moshe is recounting this entire moment of Har Sinai, and this is introduced with the words, take very, very good care of yourself. Don't forget this. And again, the Torah repeats, guard, protect yourselves well. And the Torah goes on to say, against what? Against Avodah Zarah. Be very careful. Take good care to make sure that you do not violate. We know one of the greatest isurim that a Jew could ever violate, the isur of Avodah Zarah. So a question that I'm not going to answer yet, but we will in a few minutes, is why is it that the psukim in the Torah, which according to the Talmud, the Gemara teaches, serve as the basis upon which and through which we learn the importance of preserving our physical health, come within the context of discussion of Maimon Har Sinai. But I want you to note something else very interesting, and that is that the Torah uses twice the word nefesh to describe the importance of maintaining one's body. And this perhaps brings us back to what we said beforehand. How, the Torah, there are words that the Torah could use to describe a body, but the words that the Torah uses to describe taking care of one's health is nefesh. Now you could say, well, nefesh means sort of yourself, and that's true. But on a deeper, perhaps not even such a deep level, the Torah is reminding us that our bodies and our souls, we cannot speak about them as separate entities because they are fused. They are sort of one of the same. And when the Torah is saying, take good care of yourselves, i.e., maintain good physical health, the Torah is saying, there's another very important point over here, and we're not going to discuss it now. We need a week from tomorrow night. I hope to come back to this. Tversky wrote an essay that was just published in the last few days where he made this point. But I want you to see how twice the Torah uses the word ma'od. Ma'od, very much so. The Torah emphasizing how important these principles are. When we are talking about promotion and protecting one's physical health, it is something which the Torah, not just once but twice, uses the word ma'od for that extra emphasis, because this is, of course, so important. So I have to ask you, why is it? Why is it? Because I'm going to take nothing for granted tonight. Why is it so important for us to take such good care of our health? Why is that so important from a Torah perspective? So there are, I'm sure, many answers to this question. I'm going to share with you very briefly 3 answers. The first is found in the Sefer HaChinuch. The Sefer HaChinuch Mitzvah Ayin Gimel basically says, Mishar Shem Mitzvah Zu, I'm not going to read this all inside, it's a little long, but basically says, that basically the guf is like a vessel through which the nefesh, the neshama, accomplishes its tasks in this world. And there needs to be a sort of balance between the two. And in order for the neshama to basically be able to perform its tasks, its duties in this world, so the body has to essentially protect it well. And so the way the Sefer HaChinuch explains this mitzvah is that when we are protecting our body, we are essentially protecting our soul. If we don't protect our bodies, so then our souls will no longer be able to perform, to even exist on a certain level in this world. That is the explanation of the Sefer HaChinuch. The Beragola, in his commentary in the Shulchan Aruch, has a different explanation. He says, "Atam shezira Torah al shmiras nefesh, umitam shakadosh baruch hu baras olam b'chazdo lehetiv l'nevraim." Hashem created us as an expression of kindness, that we should recognize how great Hashem is to have given me the gift of life, through which and by which I earn rather a lot of pleasure. Basically, he says that when we take care of our bodies, we are demonstrating how much we appreciate the greatest gift that God has given us, and that is our bodies, our health. I recognize and appreciate, and perhaps I should have said this earlier, many of us can go, to all ends of the world to take care of our bodies and maintain our health, and we may still have certain health conditions and health challenges that are completely out of our control. There's nothing we can do about it. At the end of the day, whether it's a matter of genes or environment, there are circumstances by which people sometimes, unfortunately, have health conditions, and it's not because of any fault of their own. But to the extent that I make choices about how I am going to maintain and protect my body, if those are poor choices, says the Beragola, what I'm basically doing is I am turning my back on God and saying thanks but no thanks on the greatest gift that we have, and that is our life, our health. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, "Ani choshev ki al pisha." I'm sorry, ki al picha chamein zuchan mivracha in l'chachet gadol yosem elios kafoi tova. I think the greatest sin is to be a kafoi dova, to be an ingrate, not to appreciate the gifts that we have been given in this world. Says Rabbi Yisrael, the greatest gift that we have been given is our health. It's through that we are ultimately able to serve Hashem. So Salanter, just like the Beragola says, that basically maintaining our physical health is so important because it's a demonstration of Hakaras HaTov. And finally, the Rambam, and this will sound like the Sefer HaChinuch, but I think that the Rambam is saying something different, in some ways a lot more practical, in some respects. The Rambam says, Ho'il v'yos haguf bari v'shalom midarkei Hashem hu, shari efshar sh'yavin o yeda davar midias habari v'hu chola. Says the Rambam on a very practical level. If we want to be able to achieve what we were put in this world to do, and that is to become closer to God, so the only way we can do that is if we are in a state of health. Because if I'm sick and I can't function normally, then I am not going to be able to be mavin v'yodeya davar midias habari. Lefichach tzarich laharchik adam atzma b'dvarim hamavdin es haguf. Lahagizma b'dvarim hamavdin v'hamachlim. Says the Rambam, therefore a person has an obligation to distance himself, to separate himself from things that are harmful to the body, and to try to conduct oneself in a way that promotes physical health, because if I do so, then I am able to serve God properly. It's so simple. Maybe it seems so obvious, but the Rambam is highlighting the most important reason of all, or for him, the only reason why it is that we have to really take good care of ourselves, and that is because how else are we ever going to serve Hashem? The Torah writes as well in our Chaim Kufman Hey, mitzvah lahaneg atzma b'mida tova v'anhaga tova lishma b'yuso kadeshi bari v'chazak la'avodas ha'borei yisala. We have to take good care of ourselves so we can serve Hashem properly. Now, you remember I asked you a question before. Why is it that the mitzvah, the psukim in the Torah, which highlight the importance of taking care of one's physical health, why are these mitzvahs found, or these psukim rather, found within the context of the discussion of Maimon Har Sinai? So in the Sefer Aseh L'Charav, the Chaim David Alevi, who was one of the former chief rabbis of Tel Aviv, has a whole very nice multi-volume set called Aseh L'Charav. Some very, very fascinating essays. I remember when I used to learn Kerem B'Yavin every once in a while, when I need a little break from my regular Seder Alimut, I would look upstairs. Anybody studied in KBY, they have like a little library up there with these books that didn't make it down to the main section. Some very interesting books. So I remember one time I stumbled upon a shelf of Aseh L'Charavs and found some very, very powerful and fascinating ideas and essays that are found in those Sfarim. So he writes over there that the whole idea is like this. He says, let's find it. Where is it? He says, in Tzivsa Torah, now, the reason why the Torah tells us, remember what happened in Har Sinai, what you saw, what you didn't see. Chazal understood in the context of this discussion as the hidden message. Basically, he says the most sublime and perhaps to a certain extent the most important fundamental spiritual obligations we have are predicated upon the simple assumption that we take care of ourselves. Because if we do not take care of our health, if we don't take care of our bodies, how then are we going to really remember what our purpose in this world is? What happened in Maimon Har Sinai? Why it is so terrible for me to allow myself to drift away and follow over the Zara? The Torah very deliberately places these instructions within the context of Maimon Har Sinai because that is the parsha that talks about basically why we are here. And we have a mission in this world. We cannot carry out that mission if we do not take care of the vessel, the kli, as we saw, the Sefer HaChinuch says, through which we are able ultimately to express ourselves and become close with Hashem. I want to share with you a very interesting story that I found you can actually find this book online. I'm forgetting right now the name of the book, but there's a very nice book that talks about the importance of health. And this particular story over here is a very, very fascinating story. Now, the story involves Rav Shach Zatzal, and you see over here, Rav Shach lives from 1899 to 2001. Now, I'm sharing that with you not only so you should know when Rav Shach lived, but as you can see, Rav Shach was zocheh to live over 100 years. Now, Rav Shach was not the only Gadol Yisrael who was able to live well into his 90s over the age of 100. It's actually fairly common. And I wonder if it's related, at least in part, to some of the things that we discussed tonight. But look at this fascinating story. At one point, Rav Shach heard that whole wheat grains are healthy. From that point, he was makbid only to eat whole wheat. So Rabbi Cheskel Aschak, I don't know if I pronounced that right, is saying that he was the one who was Misharis of Rav Shach, and he would bring him every Friday l'chavod Shabbos challah from the Angel Bakery, and he always would bring him whole wheat. On 1 week, I guess they didn't have any whole wheat available, so he brought him white bread. Darash v'shol heichan hashchoro shel Yechezkel. So Rav Shach was makbid. Now, that's all the story tells us. I have to imagine that Rav Shach did not spend many, many hours studying diet books and he didn't, spend a couple of hours a week in the gym, and he was learning all about the differences between fish oils and coconut oils and this oil and that oil. I don't think he was, I just, something tells me that he was not obsessing in the way that many of us do over, the latest, health crazes. But he heard somebody told him, I imagine it was a reliable source, perhaps it was his doctor, that, whole wheat grains is better for you. Now, if you know that, I mean, I imagine if you're listening, you know that, that's pretty much accepted. It doesn't mean that, that white bread's going to kill you, but it just means this is better. It's a healthier way to live life. So he was makbid from that point on. If that's healthier, that's the only thing I want. Because why would I ever put something in my mouth if it's not as healthy as it could be? A very fascinating Maiserav. So bottom line is positive responsibility on the one end to live a healthy lifestyle and promote physical well-being, and also the prohibition of engaging in harmful and hazardous and unhealthy behaviors is what it means to be a fully Torah observant Jew. We need to take good care of our bodies, we need to take care of our health, and we need to avoid doing things which are harmful and hazardous. I should mention that there are times that people confuse risky behaviors, or maybe not risky is not the right word, but scary things as being risky or dangerous. So for example, bungee jumping. I personally never gone bungee jumping, and I don't plan on doing so. I really have no interest in doing that or jumping out of a plane. I don't even like roller coasters. But I think it's fair to say, and you may want to do your research before you jump out of a plane, but that if you're doing it in the right way, with the right supervision, so these are fairly safe activities. Bungee jumping, I don't know. I imagine that maybe 1 in a million or 2 million or 5 million or 10 million, something goes wrong. And if you're that unlucky person, that's pretty bad. But statistically speaking, it's actually probably pretty safe, even though people think like that's the kind of thing daredevils do. On the other hand, I'm going to say something rather controversial, forgive me, but skiing, lamashal, is something which is fairly well accepted. A lot of people go skiing. They don't think twice about it. You're not considered to be a daredevil if you go skiing. But I know that my Rebbe Willig, says that there's a very serious halachic question as to whether or not a person can go skiing, because it is hazardous, because there are dangers involved. Not only do people get killed going skiing, but people get, more people are injured in the process. Now, don't take that as a psak, certainly not for me at the moment, but just understand it to appreciate that when we do things in which we are taking certain risks, and those risks are real, we have to even stop and forget, whether or not this is something I want to do or don't want to do. Is this something I'm permitted to do? Going back to that question we had before, do we have autonomy over our bodies? Am I permitted to do something in which I am assuming a certain risk? Don't assume that the answer is necessarily yes. And I want to share, we're getting close to the end over here. I want to share something very fascinating with you. I'm assuming, I don't know exactly who I'm speaking to right now. I mean, I can't see you, but there are, I imagine, probably most people who are listening right now would not eat non-kosher food. Now, whether or not you and I agree on all the hashgachas, I don't know, but most of us are going to look before we put something on our mouth, whether or not it is certified kosher. That's something I'm taking for granted and I'm assuming. So let's work with that assumption for the moment. We are careful not to put things in our mouth if they're not kosher. Now, what about putting something on our mouth that is not healthy? Now, I got to be careful how I say this. I don't think we have to, when we talk about things that aren't healthy, every once in a while a person is allowed to have, something that is not really so good for us to have in large quantities, but be it a piece of cake or some candy or ice cream, whatever it is that you like. For me, my biggest yetzer hara is French fries. Some of you may have known that. I have a very hard time just having one or two. So for me, that's my that's my yetzer hara in the form of food. So everybody's got theirs. So is there a question whether or not I'm allowed to eat it? So look at the Aruch HaShulchan, very interesting. He says, "Kashem she'asur lechol v'lishtos dvar iser." Just as you're not permitted to eat or drink something which is not kosher, kamo ken asur lechol v'lishtos davar shel sakana. You're not permitted to eat something which is dangerous. Now I know how to translate those words, and I'm not saying that for most of us, unless a person has a very, very serious allergy or is has some other very, very serious health conditions, for most of us, anything we're going to eat is not going to be literally, deadly at the moment. However, he is pointing out, and I don't think that he's only talking about a situation where a person is going to, intentionally, ingest rat poison, that there are things that we eat and there are ways that we eat and perhaps quantities of food that we consume that could be from time to time certainly the cumulative effect over time could be in the category of something which is, it's just dangerous. It's living on the edge. It's not healthy. Not only that, he said, Chazal tell us that when you're dealing with matters of personal safety, something which is considered a sakana, it could be even more serious than isura. So you're dealing on the one hand with a person who would never put something in his mouth that didn't have all the necessary kosher certifications we would look for, but he wouldn't hesitate to take half a box of, half a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts, which a lot of people are talking about these days. And the question is, I don't know, I'm putting it out there as a question. I'm putting it out as a question. And I'm saying, I'm acknowledging, I'm being very forthright over here. To have something which is unhealthy, which is just sweet and good, but junk food every once in a while, that's not a sakana. But to have more than we should, particularly for those who have other health conditions, which make even having, something, a small quantity of sweet food to be something which is harmful, that's a halachic question. After all, says the Aruch HaShulchan, a person has to be very careful about how they maintain their health. There was a person who years ago tried to convince me, member the shul, I'm not going to say his name, he may be listening right now, I don't know, but that he was saying the RCBC should not certify foods or restaurants, I don't know, where they serve unhealthy foods. Now, I thought that was a bit extreme. I still do. I don't really think that we can go that far, and to start saying that the kashrus organizations are not going to give certification to things that aren't healthy, because any doctor will tell you there's anything in the world, if you eat too much of it is not healthy, and if you eat a little bit of something that was objectively not the most healthy food, nothing's so terrible about that. So we have to use our we have to eat in moderation and have self-control and be smart about what we eat. Again, I'm sure there are people out there who say, no, I don't agree. There's no place in the world for soda. And there's no place in the world for... I don't want to get in that discussion right now. But it's interesting. It's an interesting question as to, from a kashrus perspective, even from a kashrus perspective, what I'm eating right now, is it healthy? And to remember, this is Aruch HaShulchan, who says, Kashem she'asa lecho v'lishtos dvar iser, k'mo ken asa lecho v'lishtos davar shel sakana. I'm going to skip these last couple of Makomos right now, because we are out of time, especially because we started a couple minutes late, so I'm going to stop. For those who want to join me on Tuesday night, we're going to be talking about the 5 most unhealthy habits of Orthodox Jews. That's according to me. You may have your own. But I have a feeling that we're going to agree on at least 3 out of the 5, maybe even 4 out of the 5. If you're interested in hearing what I think are the 5 most unhealthy habits of Orthodox Jews, we're going to be talking about habits that are unique to our society, to our culture, to our community. And even though I haven't really spoken at all about coronavirus tonight, I think that now is a good time to have this conversation, because many, maybe even all of these, to a certain extent, like everything we're experiencing right now in this very unusual time, we can reflect on things a little more objectively than sometimes possible. So there are certain topics of a conversation that are sometimes a little uncomfortable because we're sort of in it, where it's the way we live our life, and it's really hard to think about anything else. Right now, we are living in a time in which everything is open for discussion. We're not really in anything at the moment. And so therefore, maybe we can even have a little more of an open conversation about some of the unhealthy habits that are common in our community. And maybe we could think a little more thoughtfully and seriously about living more healthy lifestyles going forward. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. I appreciate your time and your patience. Thank you again to Eliza, who is always great in making sure that we're up and running behind the scenes. We apologize for that little glitch beforehand, but hope to see you again Tuesday night at 8:30. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. So she doesn't
Rabbi.
that, does she?
Thank you.
She is a win.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, no, that's Shifnala's sister. You're right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.